Welcome to I Have Some Questions. The show is all about asking questions our guests have never asked themselves before, never thought about, or been too afraid to explore. It's designed to uncover the human story at the root of successes and failures and help us as an audience learn and grow from that story. My hope is that you'll hear brilliant guests exploring new ideas and challenging themselves in new ways of thinking. I think this makes for great conversations. I'm going to bring on entrepreneurs, authors, coaches, scientists, and frankly, any vein of super interesting, successful, and passionate human I can find. I am fascinated by passionate people, and I have some questions for them. I'm Erik Berglund, and I hope you'll join me every week for new episodes. My most recent guest was Bruce Vojak. I hope you took some time to listen to that episode, but if you didn't, I'm going to give you the lowdown, if you will, the Cliff Notes version of my takeaways from my, 70, 80, 90-minute interview that I did with Bruce. But Bruce is an expert and author on innovation in mature industries and mature companies, which is pretty interesting. I live in kind of startup land. I tend to associate with a lot of people trying to solve new problems in new industries, whereas Bruce is so passionate about innovation that takes place inside of existing entities, kind of creating better and better mousetraps. And I took away a number of things from him. I'm frankly not even going to limit it to 3 here because I had too many great notes that I wanted to share with you all. But I hope you will give that episode a listen. I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. I love talking with technical experts who just are passionate about what specifically they know so much about. And Bruce is exactly that. And he adds just such a nice, rich humanity to innovation inside of what are largely industrial products, that it just made it super enjoyable for me. But I'm going to share a couple of my big takeaways from Bruce. One of the things that he stressed to me is that he has this caricature that caricature sounds negative. That's not even how I mean it. This character, this persona that he calls Innovator Exemplars. These are people who are just unbelievable innovators. And he says they're pretty rare. If you have a company of 10 people, maybe you'll have one of them. And if you have a company of 100 people, you might have 2. And if you have a company of 1,000 people, you'll probably have 0 because you've driven them out through too much process and haven't created enough space for them. But these rare individuals really bring something unique to business in general, but especially mature companies. And what these individuals do really, really, really well is they're focused, laser focused on serving customer needs, seeing patterns, and bringing people along with them. And these people stay laser focused on what the customer needs are. They stay committed to solving the problem. They don't lose the plot and get overly committed to executing their initial solution. You may have lived through something like that, maybe in your corporate job, or maybe you've read stories about it where someone just kind of loses the plot. They forget that what they were trying to do was X, and they become more passionate about their own solution for X than they are about maybe a better way to do it. They kind of replace the goal with the means or method that they're most passionate about. Bruce shares that innovative exemplars are people who are capable of kind of dismissing their ego and submitting to reality and just remaining on target, that the customer's problem, whether the customer is internal or external, is really what they're trying to accomplish. And for people who want to become innovative, Bruce had this piece of advice that was given to him. He just said, it's pretty simple. You find a problem you're interested in and you know a bit about, and you pursue that. That might sound overly simplistic, but I think that's part of the magic of it. Those words, the problem you're interested in, the best way to be interested in something is to be interested in it. And you know, nobody else would be able to know. You can fake interest to other people, but if you wake up genuinely thinking about something, curious and wondering more, or if it's kind of a burden to get yourself to spend time, effort, and energy thinking about it. So, find something you're interested in and a little bit about, and just pursue it. That was the advice he was given a long time ago, and he became passionate and interested in technology being applied in business, particularly mature companies. And he knew a little bit about that from his experiences. And so he went and pursued it, started writing about it, interviewing people who were these innovative exemplars, and was able to then document some of the things that made them special. And again, the things that these innovative exemplars do that you can do as well. Stay laser focused on the customer needs and see patterns other people don't see, and then bring others along with you. That last one's a big piece that, there's such a tendency when somebody comes up with a good idea to want to hoard it, right? To protect it like a dragon and his hoard of gold or something, for fear that others will diminish it or take it from you. One of the things he shared is that true innovation is so big that that doesn't happen very often. It's not to say that's never happened, right? There's probably stories out there, but just that it's pretty rare for that type of thing to happen. And usually innovation creates a lot of opportunity for other people. And if you try to hoard it all for yourself, you tend to sabotage the possibility that your innovation actually matures, because you got to bring people along with you in the process. We expanded the conversation to really talk about how organizations should embrace or could embrace innovation. And we really spent some time talking about the spectrum of responses that companies can have to internal innovation. And you may have lived through this. I absolutely have lived through this. Sometimes organizations champion every innovation. And it's almost this carte blanche, every idea is a good idea until proven otherwise attitude. And that has some merit in that it creates a lot of innovation, but it also means you spend a lot of time spinning your wheel on things that aren't that innovative, that actually don't have that much merit, or, are people's pet projects more than solutions to the real pet problems that you should be focused on. And conversely, I had more experience on this other side. You may work in an organization where any sort of new idea is just politically like pushing a boulder up a hill. There are so many entrenched golden calves and barriers and segregations of information or access or perspective that they almost intentionally make it hard to get better at anything. And his perspective was that you really want, in your companies, you really want innovation to be no more or less difficult than it would be in the marketplace. And that is to say, there should be some championing of it, because if it is a good idea, it deserves some degree of championing, and it should meet reasonable resistance that mirrors the resistance the market will have. And the closer your company's internal resistance to change or to innovation is to what the market will bear, well, the more you put the pressure on the innovator to stay focused on the real problem, not their solution, and the more you create an opportunity for rapid innovation, rapid iteration, of that innovation, because you're stress testing it in realistic ways that it's going to face in the marketplace, but you're not artificially inducing too much stress so that it breaks. And that's a hard balancing point. That's a cultural thing that I know, again, I've lived through a corporate culture where certain individuals were good at that, but most really made it tough to innovate. But if you are a business leader listening to that, there's a real opportunity for you to acknowledge if innovation makes its way to the top unchecked, or if it never makes its way to the top. And both of those would be good indicators that you may not be mirroring the market as effectively as might be valuable for your organization. And one of the last heuristics that Bruce was able to share with me that I thought was pretty fascinating, we started talking about business processes. And Bruce really stresses that innovation is a human creation, that there are processes that aid humans in doing so, but at the end of the day, it still takes a human going through that process. And there's no process that replaces the human factor in innovation. But that the best business practices really do three things well. And this is true in innovation and in any other type of process you may want to create. I thought this was really fascinating as I work with leaders who have to create or reinforce or hold people accountable to process. There are a lot of bad processes out there. There are a lot of processes that don't really serve the point, don't really serve to solve the problem they were designed to smooth, create a smooth path for solving. But the best business processes do three things. And that is that they instruct the newbie, they remind the expert, and that they discipline the executive to make a decision. I thought that was pretty powerful. The best process should absolutely instruct the newbie on what to do and how to do it. They should also remind the expert not to skip steps that they may start to take for granted in the process, that they exist for a reason. And they discipline the executive to have to make a decision, because if the process has been completed, you're in a position to say yay or nay, and you need to act on that. There should be a forcing function of the process. I've lived through a lot of processes that don't do that, but I've also seen some pretty good ones that really do make it clear what a new person's supposed to do. They really don't let the expert skip steps, and then they really thrust the decision-making clearly to the business owner, leader, whomever that might be. And those are pretty good processes. Anyway, I had just an absolutely stellar conversation with Bruce. I hope you go check out his website and his books. I hope if you are a mature company leader, you will give some consideration to the perspective he shares about how an organization can lean into innovation internally. And I hope you'll take a listen to the episode for the specific examples he gives, where he's been a part of and seen mature companies really innovate and create billion-dollar product segments out of an idea that one of their employees had, an observation the employee made about a different paradigm to think of their problem through. So I love this conversation. I hope to have Bruce back on. Thanks for joining me. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for joining us this week. Don't forget to take a second and subscribe. Maybe even share this episode with somebody it made you think of, or someone you think would take some value from it. This show is all about uncovering the brilliance and humanity of high performers. And whether those performers have a massive following, or a podcast, or a book, or they're a business owner, or they're buried somewhere in a corporation, or maybe they're a nonprofit leader, or they don't necessarily have to have a title. I'm really fascinated by people who are passionate and who are doing interesting things. So if you or somebody you know would be a good guest, don't hesitate to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or send me an email at hello@languageofleadership.io to make that connection. I'll see you next week.